Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene, talk, and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, everyone. Forgive my laughter. Brainstorm and I were discussing something incredibly ironically funny when when we were behind the scenes. He fell down an
Yeah,
internet rabbit hole, and it's amusing me.
yeah, fuck off. But and I am your host slash Time Lord wannabe, the brainstorm of pop culture. Pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I am doing mostly okay. I'm still heartily amused by that whole thing, but
Fuck off. So hey, welcome to Podcast The Storm number 250. Holy crap.
Jesus H. Christ. It is hard to believe that we have been doing this for 250 episodes, and it's even more amusing when you consider that when you take into account all the
So
secondary episodes we did and the offstage soliloquies and the like one-off one shots when we were allowed to do that before StreamYard decided to be annoying. Um it's actually even more than that.
yeah, but officially this is our 250th episode and uh
As usual, video response time.
yeah. So this is a relatively recent one that Dawn sent me about maybe a month or so ago, I think.
I think it was a little bit longer ago than that. I think.
Maybe. I don't but either way,
Because I'm
uh
just trying to remember when it originally came out. Because I know I pretty much sent it as soon as I was aware it was a
hold on.
thing.
Okay, hold on. It says November 21st, 2022.
2020. Wait, you sure it's not 2023?
That says 2022.
Okay, so yeah, this we've held back on this for a while. But yeah,
Well, no, I remember you sent this not too long ago, relatively speaking, like a few months back at least.
I must have. But I sent it pretty much as soon as I became aware it was a thing.
Yeah. But don't worry, we'll get into it, but I just want to cover a few things. One, again, I'm still very surprised that we're at this number. Every time we hit these kind of milestones for us, it's always never not going to be surprising.
It's surreal because simultaneously it feels like we've been doing this forever,
Hmm.
and yet like we just started comparatively.
Which I guess is just kind of telling how much fun we have doing these things. And um,
I
yeah,
mean, we've basically done this every week, and we've only, to the best of my recollection, missed a couple weeks. And usually we make up for it by moving it to a different day or something like that. So yeah,
there was like literally only, I think it was last year, or no, yeah, relatively last year, within like early year of 2023, that we had to skip like a couple weeks just because I myself had certain troubles with my internet
yeah,
that that have gotten fixed since then, obviously. Um,
yeah. It
but yeah,
is it is extremely surreal that that we've gotten this far, and come March will be our
I
fifth,
want to say
no,
either or.
fourth year anniversary. Because
Okay,
we started in 2019, and it's about to be 2024. So,
right.
or no,
Okay,
it would be fifth because 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022,
give me a
2023.
second because I'm gonna look up our first ever episode.
Our first ever episode was March 3rd, I believe, of 2019.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Okay. I just want to double check as well.
Yep.
Okay, hold on.
I know it's the first week of March. It moves around based on when the Sunday is in the first week of March.
Yeah. Okay. March 3rd, 2019. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So as of March this year, we will have been doing this for 5 years.
Jesus Christ.
Milestones.
Again, and like you always say, Don, it feels like we haven't been doing this long, but then it also feels like we've been doing this forever. Like just
Yeah, it's this freaking special relativistic time warp of like we simultaneously have been doing this forever, and yet no time at all seems like it's passed. And yet it has been very nearly 5 years.
to be fair, 2020 felt, like
2020 felt like 3 freaking years were
wait,
contained in 1 year.
was it 2020 or was it 2021 that was COVID?
2020.
Okay, yeah, 2020 was like just
Because it was the weekend, or it was the like Friday before St. Patrick's Day that year that the lockdown started.
right. Okay, yeah, that just felt like a couple years.
Yeah, 2020 warped everybody's sense of time, and I don't think we're alone in that, because like it was almost like 10 years had gone by with almost no significant historical events, and then whoever was in charge of sprinkling the historical events throughout the decade was like, I have like 5 major historical events I still have to use, and we only have 1 year left. Just throw it all in 2020, it won't matter.
Hold on, I want to make sure I put the audio on for this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, share audio. There we go. Okay, yeah, but like I said, don't send me this. This is from Vice News. Inside the pedophilic manga industry in Japan. Like I said before, this was originally published November 21st, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I guess before we start, should we just kind of lay our own stance, like our own belief of the manga industry?
Yeah.
So we, okay. To be fair, I'm not like the biggest into manga. I've read a few things. Like the one I most got into when I was growing up was Bakuman, which was literally a story about manga creators. I still need to find like I need to get like the whole series and read it. Like
Mm-hmm. I own the omnibus of the Death Note manga because somebody did do a collected edition at one point.
yeah. Though I think those are those supposed to be like light novels rather than manga?
Well, yes, but it's a collection of an entire manga series. So
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, my whole stance about the manga industry is it's a lot more freer than the comics industry and is a lot more profitable currently.
It's also a lot more bizarre because, well, I think maybe nuking Japan may have brought the freak out of the entire culture, and so much the better as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, fair enough. I want to say it's a lot more vast in terms of genres than possibly the comic book industry. Not saying that as a slight against the comic book industry, because we obviously grew up with that ourselves, but there's a lot more there in the manga industry than comics, sort of. I mean, there is branching out, obviously, but it's been primarily capes and costumes and stuff like that, with like other things that are surrounding that. But we've had a whole discussion about the superhero genre.
To be fair, manga does have a similar thing going on because the majority of the mangas that are sold are shonen, which are the ones that are usually like the action oriented mangas that are targeted at like boys
Yeah,
starting in their adolescence and into their teenage years, which is
yeah. So
generally also the main audience for
yeah,
comics.
understandable, and I get that, and yeah, that's fair. That is a fair point.
But as far as the pornographic aspect of manga, one, I'm not prudish enough to give a shit. Two, it's not immoral if no one is actually harmed by it and their drawings. As long as those drawings aren't directly supposed to resemble any IRL human, then who gives a fuck
Yeah,
is where I'm at.
I mean, you can make an argument. There is some arguments with like the over sexualization, but then again, it's more case by case scenario, and that depends on personal preferences as well.
Yeah, and again, if no one is actually harmed by it and their drawings, made for the specific purpose of, catering to that market, who
Mm,
cares?
yeah.
Because the part of that that's wrong is that people are actually damaged by it. If no one is ever actually damaged by it, then who cares?
Yeah. Hello, Ed Brewer. Good to see you. It's been a while, man. Say good evening.
Hello, Ed. 250 episodes this show has been going.
Yeah.
And that's not even counting all the one-offs and spin-offs and individual episodes we did back when StreamYard wasn't quite so anal retentive about the
Hours.
time we spent on it.
Yeah.
And if we can ever actually get a sustained, income from this, then we can pay for the extra fucking hours, and then we can go back to doing some of the one-offs and spin-offs and shit. That would be nice.
Sorry. All right. Anyway, shall we?
Yep. What is the super fruit from One Piece called?
Devil fruit.
Yeah, devil fruit. Perfect.
Unless you want to be a specific devil fruit.
I mean, not
Okay,
not
yeah.
not anything. I just wanted it to be some. I just wanted our normal like pause word to be a fruit that was anime or manga related.
Okay, yeah.
And
It's
like I almost went Apple because Death Note, but that wasn't quite. It just didn't have the whimsy factor enough.
yeah,
So
devil fruit then. Yeah, devil fruit.
Devil fruit. Can you read the subtitles?
Yeah, I can. There's nothing of note here. It's just them talking, getting to Anime Expo, I think, or some type of convention of anime.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing out on the like context or anything.
Yeah, I was gonna, but I was gonna use the closed captions for this, but they're auto-generated, and I don't trust those often.
Yeah.
Which is weird because this is an official channel for something. You'd think they'd have actual captions.
Well, but you'd also expect Vice News to be competent because they call themselves a news organization, and when has that ever mattered? The Mary Sue also is a news organization, allegedly, and yet we have made quite a standing arrangement of pointing out their various incompetencies.
Right.
Although, in fairness, the Mary Sue hasn't had any like fun incompetence or fun stupidity in a while, which is a shame.
Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, you can hear this, right? Like,
yeah, I can hear it fine. It's just I don't speak enough Japanese to know what the fuck is going on by itself. So I was like, in
yeah, it's fair.
the event that the dialogue is important, which it probably is, I wanted to make sure we weren't like missing context or misrepresenting anything.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on it. I'll read it as we go. So,
Okay.
but yeah, currently it's just them. It's like an opening to it. So,
Yep. Devil fruit.
Devil Fruit.
We're heading to Anime Japan right now, and it's the largest anime convention in the world.
Anime and manga are one of Japan's most popular and lucrative cultural exports. In 2020, anime alone raked in almost $18 billion in domestic and international sales, with its appeal to people of all ages.
Correct. And why do I get the feeling you're going to spend the next 10 minutes or so fear-mongering about that? Oh, wait, because you're Vice News, and that's how that works.
What's weird
Almost
is I have a family.
Inevitably.
What's weird is I have a family member who watches Vice News, but like the documentary stuff on like on crime shit and stuff like that, which is actually well handled.
Yeah, back when they first started and were actually like anti-establishment and irreverent and shit. Whereas now, ironically indeed, Vice News, called Vice News, does nothing but virtue signal for the establishment and the dominant moral zeitgeist.
Right. Anyway, okay,
Devil
so
fruit.
I was gonna say someone here is saying I watch it every week. It's entertaining, helps me relax. So
Yeah, but
I don't know if
I
that's.
mean, Ed, you can confirm that most of the content on Vice News is social justice hit pieces, basically.
Did Ed say something? I totally.
Oh, was it? Oh, it wasn't Ed.
No, I was reading what was said in the video.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Like someone was saying they watch anime and.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. I was gonna say it didn't seem like something Ed would do to subject himself to Vice News, and I don't think there's a single person that insular that they make a habit of watching Vice News. And
No,
if there is anyone that insular that all they do is watch Vice News for entertainment, you poor twisted soul, you.
Okay. Anyway, shall we?
Yep.
Devil Fruit.
Dragon fruit. Or devil fruit.
There
Wrong.
might actually. There might be a dragon fruit in One Piece. I have no idea. They got weird fruits in there.
It wouldn't surprise me, but dragon fruit's actually a real thing. So
I know.
Anyway, devil fruit.
Devil Fruit.
Whether it's stories about martial arts or magical girls saving the world, the focus is often on cute and innocent characters. But sometimes, the line between cute and concerning can get pretty blurry.
There are a few really young.
If their drawings are not meant to resemble anyone IRL, who gives a fuck? And more importantly, should they give a fuck?
Well, I think they're going to bring up something, but I think people also forget that often when there's a young, quote-unquote, young character, they're usually like super fucking older than they look, like immortals, you know?
Well, because youth and beauty is very much central to Japanese culture. So even characters who are ostensibly old look like they're still in their 20s. Unless being old and ugly is part of the character design.
If I understand, 30 for women in Japan is kind of the off age where they're supposed to be married before they're 30 in terms of the culture.
Yeah. Also, something to keep in mind, and this might be me being somewhat controversial. Japanese people don't age very noticeably in and of themselves.
No, dude. unless they went through some real shit, and you clearly can tell they went through some real shit. They don't age at all. Like I have,
like Michelle Yeoh for example, I believe is in her 50s or 60s.
And she looks in her
She
30s, right?
she could easily pass for mid-30s probably. Now,
Yeah.
please by all means Google that to make me not a liar, but yeah.
Yeah, give me 1 second. She's 61.
Yeah. And she could easily pass for 35 if she had to. Or maybe even younger than that, depending.
Yeah, just
Granted, there are plenty of Western actors who also have a kind of ageless immortality about them, but
Yep.
it must also be said that, as a general rule, I have watched a lot of Asian movies, and I have seen a lot of Asian things, and as a general rule, characters are neither depicted as aging noticeably by Western standards,
I mean,
and in
also,
general, the population of the country also doesn't appear to age as noticeably by Western standards.
I also mean point out the fact like you and I, like Dalton and I look younger when I shave, and I often try to, just because I don't really think I can grow a beard, right? So, and then Dalton looks a lot older because he has the beard and like a lot of different factors, but people often don't look like the age they are.
Yeah, in large part also because the younger generations especially are also aging slower because there's less traumatic shit that the younger generation had to go through relative to the boomers and the silent generation. Like you can watch old movies, like old Vincent Price movies, for example. Characters like people that were in their 20s at the time look like they would be in their 30s or 40s now. And it's because, as a general rule, because of fewer aging factors, people stay looking younger longer, and therefore yesterday's 40 or yesterday's 20 or 30 is how the average 40 or 50-year-old looks now.
Right. Anyway, shall we?
Yeah. Devil fruit.
All right, give me 1 second. There. Devil fruit.
Looking girls in basically little to no clothing. To me personally, it's kind of uncomfortable. They're very clearly children, and it's just sort of out on display right here. And people are just walking around as though nothing is wrong, nothing is different.
These images
Because
Again,
nothing is wrong or different, you moron. They are drawings, and unless they are meant to deliberately resemble someone that actually exists, that might be a gray area. But
right, it's
even
also,
then,
again, the question of how old are they supposed to be? And again, no one looks the age they're supposed to be these days.
yeah,
Look, let me tell this story. I was a senior in
Go
high
ahead.
school. Right? I was a senior in high school. There were freshmen that look like fucking grown-ups because one, they're a lot fucking taller than me, and just face-wise, they look like they're supposed to be seniors, and I look like a freshman. So again, it's just like it's a weird thing of like that age thing. And while I'm not gonna lie, there are some designs. Again, I think it's just again the case by case scenario of, is this necessary? Does it work for the story and all that stuff? Again, like just the individual factors of why there are.
Well, it also is related to how Japanese culture specifically works. Like,
Yeah.
their standards for attractiveness are very often centered on what we would call things like nyatni, youth, femininity, or like for example, Light Yagami in Death Note. He is supposed to be, by Japanese standards, a complete and utter knockout. but from our Western standards of male beauty, he doesn't look like anything particularly special, because in Japanese culture, what we would generally refer to as the twink look is very much in, and has been, like, it's been a consistent thing for generations over there in Japan. They
Um,
define beauty by things like neoteny, femininity, innocence, etc.
right. Also, well, I think you also got to ask the art style as well is a factor too. For
Well,
right,
and that was the thing we were getting at. We were getting at earlier. Characters that are meant to be old in anime, unless being excessively old or decrepit looking is part of their character, they don't look old. For example, Maximilian Pegasus in otherwise known as Pegasus J. Crawford in the original Japanese dub.
I'll be
Um,
honest. I like his English name better.
Yeah, no, his English name is Fire, and someone please give a raise to whoever came up with the translation. But that's neither here nor there. He is supposed to be very old in the universe of the anime, but he looks like he's in a very, very early part of his 20s for most of the anime.
Oh, I was gonna say 40s.
Well, the problem is with the art style of most anime, unless the artist goes out of their way to draw wrinkles, like, for example, the main character in House Moving Castle after she gets the old woman curse put on her, unless the artist particularly goes out of their way to draw wrinkles and aging, all characters look like they have the most pristinely smooth skin possible.
All right. Ed Brewer, if you think pedos aren't drawn to this, you're delusional. That's not at all what we're saying.
I don't care. If they're drawings and no actual child is harmed as a result of it, I do not care.
But that's also not what we're saying at all, though.
No. We're saying this Vice bitch is fear-mongering about an art style that she knows nothing of, and she's fear-mongering on very little to no, like, actual substance at all.
Right. It's the implication of the overgeneralization of the industry of manga.
It's the pearl clutching hysteria of, oh, be afraid because this might be morally questionable. But again, in the case of manga, I would certainly rather a person who felt that kind of attraction get it out of their system by jerking off to drawings than ever actually harming a child. And as long as they're jerking off to drawings and getting it out of their system that way, and no actual child is harmed, that's actually better for the world. In the same way that video games are more likely to offer catharsis for violent or angry impulses rather than encourage violent or angry impulses. They let you blow off steam in a way that does not actually harm anyone, and that is good.
All right. Anyway, shall we?
Yeah. Devil fruit.
Okay, there we go. Devil fruit.
Are tame compared to what's out there.
Oh, goddamn. Hold on.
If you're really going to fearmonger about how risque Japanese art is, I'll take you to some of the more degenerate spaces on places like Tumblr and DeviantArt, and you can get your moralizing rocks off there, dear. Because while it's certainly more common and more accepted in Japanese culture, and Japanese culture is extremely weird about what it does and doesn't tolerate, by our standards. Just because anthropomorphic furry stuff is more accepted in something like Beastars in Japan doesn't mean that I can't take you to some of the seedier parts of DeviantArt or Tumblr, and you could get just as panicky about that.
Right. Sorry, ad happened, so I had to handle that real quick. I'm American. I would never say you can't do it. Okay. Says Ed.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
Okay. Yeah.
Wrong. Nothing is different.
These images are tame compared to what's out there. Online and in bookshops, there's an entire subgenre of animated child pornography.
誰も、被害者がいないフィクションですから狭い
Okay. Hold on. Hold on. Let me back that up a bit.
There's an entire subgenre of animated child pornography.
誰も
It's fiction that has no victims.
Based.
被害者がいないフィクション
This man is named Shinji. He's a manga artist. Okay, yeah, he's the one who's saying that.
Yeah, based manga artist. Correct. That is the objectively correct answer. They are drawings. They are not even meant to resemble real people, and therefore no one is meaningfully harmed by it. And even then, there's as Brainstormer keeps bringing up the question of whether the character is actually a minor in terms of age, or they just look like they do. Not to mention, if we're really getting all Helen Lovejoy-esque and pole clutchy about the subgenres of manga, there are manga that specifically frame as sexual completely non-human things. I mean, it's the internet's favorite punching bag, but tentacle hentai exists. And yet you're getting moralistic and pole clutchy because some people look too feminine, yachtness, and young. Oh, the horror.
I think there is a certain limit for that. But I get.
Yeah, I'm with the manga artist on this one. It's
No, I agree. I agree.
fiction that has no victims, so who cares?
Okay, hold on. Give me 1 second.
Being disgusting is not the same as being immoral, necessarily. I mean, certainly many immoral things are disgusting, but being disgusting by itself does not denote immorality.
Right, fair enough. All right, let me. So I'm gonna have to pause a lot because this guy he's speaking Japanese and the credit and the captions. So
yeah.
All right. Devil fruit.
Devil's fruit. Yep.
ですから狭い自分だけの空間でそれを楽しむのは
People should be allowed to enjoy themselves in their private worlds.
Based.
Yeah.
まあそれはちょっと許してほしいなっていう気はします。
Shinji is an anime superfan and also one of the artists creating comics that show child pornography.
覚える人も多分中
I'm
に
sure there are people who get sexually aroused by these drawings.
Mm-hmm.
いると思うんですけど、自分は
You can't force someone to stop just because you're you can't force someone to stop just because you're disgusted.
Once more based. Again, like I said, many immoral things are disgusting, but not all disgusting things are de facto immoral.
Right.
Disgust by itself does not constitute a moral argument. It is a reaction. What matters is what that reaction is caused by. And in this particular case, for example, if it doesn't violate John Stuart Mill's harm principle, i.e., if no one is actually harmed by it, then who gives a fuck?
Devil Fruit.
Devil's Fruit.
それを一概に気持ち悪いからやめなさいとはできないし、私が不愉快に思う
You
から
can't create laws just because of personal objections.
Again, based and objectively correct. Ed, Vice basically made a hit piece documentary about how awful manga is because it shows characters that are too young by the standards of the Vice journalists.
Yeah, basically, if the character looks super young, despite the context that they might actually be older than they look,
Or not even human, etc., and so on.
they are.
Porn.
It's child pornography, basically.
Yeah, that's my reaction too. Is like it doesn't harm anyone, and so there is no moral argument here. And again, like I said, in the same way that video games can act as a catharsis for violent or angry impulses and actually result, therefore, in a decrease in violence, if someone feels the urge to, think of children in that way, I would much rather they do it with drawings that don't actually correlate to any real people than to actual pictures of actual kids being abused. So, like, if some creep gets their rocks off to an anime drawing and therefore doesn't go on to little kids, then that actually is better for the world, as far as I'm concerned.
They aren't calling for a cease and desist. I don't get it.
Yeah, they are actually. They're basically fear mongering. This entire documentary, air quotes, is basically fear mongering about, oh, how gross and degenerate the manga is. We should do something about it. Derp.
We are in the U.S. unless it's a Japan law or something. They haven't yet. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
There are no laws against this sort of thing in Japan, which is why it's as common as it is in Japan. So, but anyway.
I think it's just one is kind of that cultural barrier of these of Vice, because it's a Western thing. They're not getting it.
They want to be Karens, and they want to basically pearl clutch and go, won't somebody please think of the hypothetical children, and yada yada yada.
Yeah, they're more grandstanding, basically, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's basically what's happening here, and we always try to topple that grandstanding wherever we can. So that's why we're doing this video.
It's like a philosophical game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Devil Fruit.
法律でなんか裁くべきだ、法律を作るべきだっていう風にもならないんですよね。
Japanese lawmakers agree with artists like Shinji. In the U.S., just owning a magazine with animated.
What did
what I read earlier about how you can't create laws based on personal objections. That's what he was saying. I just paused in the middle of it so I could read it.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. Let me back it up a bit because she was talking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there we go. Okay, ready?
Mm-hmm.
Devil Fruit.
Devil Fruit.
Japanese lawmakers agree with artists like Shinji. In the US, just owning a magazine with animated child porn can get you up to 15 years in prison and label you a sex offender for life.
Well, then that's a problem with our laws, isn't it?
When child
Yeah, I feel like that's a weird standard to have.
If anything, that implies we should change the laws in America. If it's actual pictures of children, then by all means, throw the book at them. But if it's drawings of people that don't actually even exist, then duffa. Who cares?
I-
When did I say that?
Uh,
I am on the non-censorious side in this case. Again, like I said, if it's actual pictures of actual children who are actually in an industry that is exploiting them, then throw the book at the person who has them. But if it's pictures of people who do not exist and therefore will not be harmed by someone jerking off to them, then freedom of expression. Just like I don't think DeviantArt or Tumblr should be censored because of the frankly quite degenerate shit that's on there either.
you both said it isn't child porn. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
It isn't. Yeah. It isn't because the people in the drawings don't exist, and therefore there's no one actually harmed by the thing.
I feel like
I'm confused.
yeah.
Maybe Ed is on a delay or something. I don't know. Anyway, dragon fruit.
Then what?
I did it again. Devil fruit.
Then what is this? What? I haven't.
Vice is fear mongering and moral grandstanding about how they're offended that Japanese people can buy manga like this, and we're basically taking the piss out of them for it because they're being morally censorious twits.
Yeah, like legit actual chat. No, for the New York Times article here, Japan outlaws possession of child pornography, but comic book depictions survive. That's
because they're not the same thing.
Yeah, like legit child pornography has actual photos and images of children that have been
being exploited.
Yeah, which should be illegal.
Yeah, right. But they're drawings, so no actual human is harmed. So it's different.
The one who made this video / article, because I assume it's also an article somewhere, is using this to support her opinion of that it should be illegal for both fictional depictions of it and actual depictions of it. Well, I agree with the actual that the fictional depictions. Let me rephrase that. Sorry, that fictional depictions should be treated just like the actual thing.
Yeah, the person who wrote this title assumes that there is no substantive difference between people that actually exist and people that don't.
This is all nonsense, says Ed. Yeah. Yes, that's why we're covering it, because it's idiotic.
Yes, and it needs to be laughed at and mocked because it is unfortunately taken seriously by the media establishment. Vice is considered a reputable, I guess, not periodical, because they don't actually print magazines to the best of my recollection, but Vice is considered a reputable news source according to some people, and therefore we are taking the piss out of them for being moralistically censorious twits. Anyway, devil fruit.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
pornography was finally banned in Japan in 2014, publishers lobbied to keep animated child porn legal, arguing that artists' freedom of speech is protected by the Constitution. Today, all manga, no matter how sexually explicit, is protected by law.
Good. Next. Does this woman seriously not understand the fundamental difference between people who are and actually can be harmed and basically conceptual persons who can't and aren't?
What do you? I have no idea what that means, Ed. Some find this legit news, and those people watch your show. Got it. Why the fuck you mean
Ed, this is not new. We take the piss out of things that are stupid and morally censorious. Like this is what we've done for literally 250 episodes now. We do that all the freaking time.
No, we're not trying to correct people fooled by this. We're just taking the piss out of it itself.
Because the ideas themselves are wrong and deserve to be rebutted and refuted as much as possible, and mocked for the sake of why does anyone take this seriously? The best tool to refute people for being dumb is mockery. Hence, we mock things that are stupid or that take themselves too seriously, which this counts as both. Because it is both stupid and it is morally grandstanding and taking itself seriously.
Okay. We're gonna continue.
Yeah, I'm very confused. Anyway, let's continue doing what we've done for 250 episodes, basically. Anyway, moving forward.
Yeah. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
あるかな。これは、一番最初に書いたもの。
Shinji says the loophole protects his freedom of expression as an artist. He's 49 years old, but his drawings focus on children in elementary school.
That don't exist. Unless he's actually using real children as models. If he's using real children as models, then fuck him. By all means. But most of the time, the people that these people draw are completely made up from inside their own heads. So, again, as long as no one is actually harmed by this or exploited by it, then fuck off, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway. So, shall we devil fruit?
Devil fruit.
He says it's harmless because it doesn't involve real kids.
Objectively correct answer.
このストーリーは、とりあえず女の子がレイプ、これはSM 雑誌だったんですよ。SM 誌で、とにかく両辱って呼ばれる、女の子は、
What did the guy say?
Something about the first manga he wrote. Asked what it was about. Said it was about a. Hold on. I'm moving it back. About a girl who was hard-R'd. And it was in a BDSM magazine called The R Word.
Mm-hmm.
With hold on, I'm just trying to. theme of the magazine was humiliating girls. Okay.
Some people have a humiliation fetish. And
Yeah, I think that's a thing. Anyway,
devil fruit.
devil fruit.
締めることがテーマの雑誌だったんですよね。なので、とにかくレイプ
They just told me to draw a hard R word. You know.
Yeah. And no actual person was harmed by this imagery at all. And no one is being forced to read it or something, so only the people who are interested in such a niche ever discovered it, probably. And the people who saw it that didn't like it probably just walked away and did other things with their lives.
Moving on.
Yep. Devil fruit.
ネタで書こうっていうことで、特にあんまり考えずに書いてます。
I didn't put much thought into it.
No, because he was an artist, he was being paid to draw a thing, and he drew a thing. And no one was harmed at any point in this instance.
I mean, it's effectively like commission work and stuff, which, you know, artists get paid these days how to do that. So
yeah, and lest you think that this only ever happens in Japan, no, it happens here too. Again, go to the seedier parts of Tumblr or DeviantArt sometime, and I guarantee you will find probably things inspired by the very same anime we're talking or manga we're talking about. To be honest with you, but devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
So this story is about a young high schooler, and she's getting gang raped by a bunch of high school boys. So what they're doing is ejaculating in condoms, and then they're putting the condoms inside the girl.
Yeah, and their drawings.
That's graphic, but again, yeah, it's fictional.
Their drawings, my dear. Are you actually advocating that we should never tell any fictional stories that involve sexual assault as the plot or the inciting incident? Because that would actually retard artistic expression. Because at that point you're basically asking for all conflict, all bad things to be taken out of stories. And usually bad things happen in stories as some kind of inciting incident or to frame the villain as being villainous. If you prevent villains from doing villainous things, then the entire conceit of storytelling basically gets broken down.
Devil fruit.
Devil's fruit. Yep.
Okay.
And she is apparently sexually enjoying this process as well. This is quite, I don't know if violent cuts it, to be honest.
Okay, so wait, hold on a second. So in the example that you felt was graphic enough to show us, even in universe, the woman is not being harmed. Like, she's enjoying the thing. And I hate to burst this particular bubble for you, actually. No, I kind of love bursting this bubble for you because you're almost into it. But in any case, sometimes people have forceful sex fantasies. People have what are referred to as R word that we can't get away with saying because YouTube fantasies. Like, have you ever read a bodice ripper novel? Because like this trope is at least as old as body stripper novels. Body stripper novels almost always feature one character being extremely forceful in this way, and the woman basically being titillated to it or by it. So even in the example that you thought was, scandalous enough to show us and prove your point, the character in universe was enjoying it. So even if we were to take like the fiction aspect out of it, like, yeah, she's enjoying it. So not only is it all fictional and therefore not worth getting morally upset about, but also even in the fiction, the character is enjoying it and not protesting. So you have no case either way.
Yeah, the author of it says this is a girl who has those desires. It's
Like, where is supposed to be the thing we're all supposed to get all clutchy and morally, in an uproar over? Because no harm is actually occurring in reality. No harm is occurring in universe. The author's intent was not harmful or scandalous. So I'm looking at this system of yours from like every angle I can think of, and I still don't see any problem. Moving on.
yeah. Okay. Get to the tab. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
実はこの女の子はそういう願望を持っている女の子で、
レイプされる願望。
そうです。そういういわゆる変態な子なんです。
Okay, so the woman desired to be hard art worded, and the author says, yes, she's what we'd call a perverted child.
Yeah, by which he means someone who wants that kind of, again, R-word fantasy. Which, again, Western women have that too, and it has existed for a long time. Again, if you've ever heard of body stripper novels, that's basically the conceit of most body stripper novels. The forceful, dangerous man being attractive because he's forceful and dangerous. The oh, aren't I so naughty because I'm imagining myself in this situation kind of scandalousness.
Anyway, shall we?
Yep, devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
But it's not just about art. Shinji admits he's attracted to children. He agreed to talk to us because he believes his work prevents pedophiles from abusing kids by allowing them to live out their dark fantasies alone.
僕自身は要は抑止力だと思う。
Personally, I think of this as a deterrent.
Yeah, like again, I didn't even know this was going to go here because I hadn't watched this far into the thing before. But yeah, even in this context, based, because every time someone who feels this way masturbates to something that isn't human and can't be harmed, that's one time they would have maybe done something naughty to an actual child that they didn't do because they had the catharsis already. In the same way, every person who has anger issues and gets those anger issues out through playing violent video games, that's one case of violent crime that they didn't commit because they got their catharsis by way of a fictional medium that doesn't harm anyone. Except for maybe their game controller in the case of video games. Because I have known many people to smash their game controllers when they're getting really riled up. But that harms no one but the person who paid for the game controller, which is usually the person using it. Anyway, devil fruit.
作品を提供できれば、そこに犯罪を未然に防いだことになるわけですよね。
He said, hold on. If I can provide the work, I will have prevented a real crime.
Okay, not only is this based, it's actually kind of noble. Like, it's actually a preventative measure
Mm.
that doesn't involve harming anyone. So, both based and actually laudable.
With the interviewer, a reporter, I guess you could say, says, but you don't know that.
Okay, and you don't know that anything he's drawn has actually harmed anyone. So go and find me an example of someone who was driven to this kind of attraction by animated, images, or acknowledge that you are just as uninformed as the person that you're trying to grandstand over. Because I certainly can imagine that, much like violent fantasies getting out through the medium of video games, I could easily imagine someone who did feel this kind of attraction, and instead of doing an actually harmful thing to anyone who actually is real, they went and found themselves in an animated magazine and got their rocks off that way, which is better than the alternative by several orders of magnitude. Obviously, in a perfect world, no one would feel this way, but we don't live in a perfect world. So actually, it is noble and notable if someone who feels this way chooses to not harm people and instead get their rocks off harmlessly to animated pictures. Just like, furry comics are better than traumatizing some poor animal for people who have bestiality tendencies.
Right. So moving on.
Yep. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
でもそれがわからないです。
それはわからない。
逆に日本ですと、
He said, I don't know that, and the lady is saying, on the other hand, in Japan, the number of cases, sexual violence against
児童に対する性暴力の件数は年々上がってるっていうの
children
は、
has been increasing every year.
Probably because the population also increases every year. And the same is true in the West, by the way.
Don't they also have the highest suicide rate in the world? Like Japan?
They do.
I'm not saying that's a correlation. I'm just saying a lot of fucked up shit.
Right. And yeah, while we're on the subject, the same statistic in the US is the same way. Because the more people there are, the larger the percentage of those people are going to have some kind of criminal deviancy, and some of those people with that criminal deviancy are unfortunately going to act on it. But there's no reason to believe that animated pictures cause that kind of deviancy any more than you can believe that violent video games cause people to want to be school shooters. And if anything, we have data that suggests catharsis is a reasonable treatment in such circumstances. Violence has actually gone down in the West, for example, since video games became a thing, because people who have anger issues or violent tendencies can, rather than taking those anger issues and those violent tendencies on real people, they go home and they play, GTA 5 or whatever for a couple hours, or they play Doom or whatever their particular favorite video game happens to be. But playing Mortal Kombat and getting your anger issues out that way is much better than going out on the actual street and beating the shit out of someone. And likewise, jerking off in the privacy of your own home to animated pictures where no one will actually be harmed is several worlds better than actually going out and doing unspeakable things to kids.
Yep. Anyway, shall we?
Yep. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
う。もしこのリンクがあるっていう
Well, if you can
証
prove
明が
that,
出て、
証明ができれば、
then I suppose it would have to
ま
be
あそれは仕
banned.
方ないですね。
That doesn't mean you're able to prove that, and that doesn't mean that you have any evidence to prove that. And then, even if there was a link, the natural follow-up question would be how strong is that correlation? How solid is that link? And the burden is definitely on you to establish that the link is strong enough to be worried about. Because because there's this thing in social science, this principle known as correlation doesn't equal causation. And you're trying to infer some kind of causation from this correlation, which you haven't even established a statistical correlation yet, by the way. So there. First, establish that there is actually a link. Then you need to establish that that link is actually strong enough to be worried about. You haven't done either yet, though.
Sorry.
Mhm.
Alright. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
でもなぜ証明まで待たなきゃいけないんですかね。
But why do we have to wait until there's proof? She says.
Because making accusations or suppositions without evidence is bullshit in literally every context ever. We have to wait until there's proof, because if there's not proof, then you're limiting people's artistic expression for no good or explicable reason. It's like saying, it's like saying, we're going to burn you at the stake to save you from hell, and then the person being burned at the stake asks, how can you be certain there's even such a thing as hell? And then you just go, well, we'll figure it out when we, or you'll see once you're dead somehow. Like, that's sort of a shitty reason to burn someone at the stake, no? Well, telling an artist that they're not allowed to draw whatever it is they're drawing because there might be this correlation that you haven't evidenced or shown is strong enough worry to be statistically significant, is just as, I mean, maybe not just as wrong, because in the one hypothetical you're killing someone, and the other you're stymieing their ability to express themselves, but in the same way, it would be wrong to arbitrate things based on what might be the case rather than what is the case. Because literally any hypothetical could be thought of as true with no evidence or reason to believe it. And if you just accept things on the basis that you feel vaguely disgusted by it, that's not a reason. Disgust can, like, again, just to be clear, immoral things can be disgusting. But something being disgusting does not necessarily indicate that they are immoral by itself. Disgust is not an argument. It's a piece of, like, emotional reaction. So it can be caused by something that is immoral, but not all disgusting things are immoral. And sadly, unfortunately for a lot of people, not everything that's immoral is disgusting. So disgust itself is not an argument.
Right. Devil fruit.
Yeah, devil fruit.
っていうのは証明が出たっていうのは児童
Meaning that if proof has been found, that means a child became a victim.
Yes, but you actually have to prove your case before you are allowed to force everyone to act on that case, my dear. Because here's the thing, and this is kind of similar to the hashtag #MeToo hysteria. An accusation of something is not the same as a conviction of that thing. Like, being accused of something is not the same as being convicted of that thing. Being accused of a crime is not a conviction of that crime. Because of this thing we call the standard of innocent until proven guilty and the standard of reasonable doubt. Both of these things have to be met for something to be meaningfully considered a crime. And you haven't even established that there's a statistical correlation between these things, let alone that correlation is in any way causal, let alone that whatever correlation there may or may not be is statistically significant enough to actually want to act upon. You have several carts before your horse here, my dear. You have at least 3 jobs you need to do before you are allowed to get morally offended enough to get people to change the law. And until you've done at least those 3 things, 1, there is a correlation, 2, that correlation is statistically significant, and 3, it is causal, then maybe we can have the conversation if you successfully prove those 3 things. If you do not successfully prove those 3 things, then GTFO.
Devil fruit.
Devil fruit. Also,
の
hi
被
Joe.
害者が出たっていうことじゃない。
逆に、
Someone new or has Joe been here before? But somebody
I-
popped in chat and said hi.
Hello.
Mhm. But devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
証明が出るまで待つのはいけないんでしょうか。
On the other hand, is it wrong to wait for proof?
No, it is definitely not wrong to wait for proof
Okay.
because
No, you can keep talking. Alright, okay, let me present again because damn ad happened. Okay. Anything, or shall we go?
I think I already said it, but good for
Senji.
Shinji. No, it's not wrong to wait for proof because acting on an accusation without any confirmation is actually wrong. That's how people get into moralistic hysteria. That's how you wind up with witch hunts and mass persecutions and gulags and concentration camps and shit. Because we've accused you of this thing and therefore we've decided you're guilty is not a good argument.
Yeah.
Especially if it's going to be fucking around with people's lives. And to an artist, the ability to creatively express things is basically their livelihood.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm good. Damn, I'm tired. All right. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
言葉にはできないんですけれども、その人権侵害性ですね。
Kazuna Kanajiri runs an
So the person was saying, hold on. Actually, let me. Okay, I'm gonna back it up and then we're gonna play it alone. Okay.
言葉にはできないんですけれども、
This is too old to put in words. I think reading one of the manga like that.
その人権侵害性ですね。
This is a violation of human rights. Okay, let me continue because I think they were going to introduce this person. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Devil fruit.
Yep.
Kazuna Kanajiri runs an organization that helps victims of sexual violence, including kids who have been abused or forced into child pornography. We showed her one of Shinji's comic.
Okay, then that actually makes you the bad guy, because you are forcing this person probably to relive trauma through this.
No. It's a person who helps kids like that. I don't think they went through it themselves.
Okay.
But still, that is
A false equivalency for starters is what that is, because in one case you have actual flesh and blood human beings being physically and psychologically damaged by shit, and that is objectively wrong.
Yeah.
In every conceivable metric you care to use. And then in the other case, you have drawings that are usually completely made up from inside the writer or the artist's own mind, and therefore hurt no one.
Right. And I want to point this out. I don't know the word for it, but it's very disingenuous to give this stuff to someone who helps children and people that have gone through sexual assault. More than likely, yeah, they're not going to like this because they've seen that
they have a bias. They devote their lives to helping actual flesh and blood kids, and so much the better. But here's the thing: this is why the factor here is important of the freedom of commerce. People who don't like this content do not have to purchase it, but people who do like it are also free to purchase it. The only other option is that we ban people from making art like this. And given that no one is harmed, and as the other guy, the one who draws them and thinks that he might potentially be offering people with those tendencies catharsis so they don't actually go and harm real people. As he mentioned, there is a not insubstantial probability that having this type of art helps people because it allows people who are afflicted with that tendency to harmlessly get their kicks without actually feeling the need to hurt anyone. which is better than the alternative where they would in fact go out and hurt people.
Devil fruit?
Yeah, devil fruit.
Sucks.
そうですね。今この漫画を読んでですね、やはりこう、パップスに被害相談寄せられ
Right now, hold on. Sorry, I should have paused it sooner. Right now, when I'm reading this manga, I can see
ね、やはりこう、パップスに被害相談寄せられ
the
た
faces of those who came to us for help. Again, yeah, so that's clear. Like you're using a biased perspective for this.
Yeah, because in one case, they're flesh and blood people who definitely do deserve all of our sympathy and all of our help that we can give.
Mhm.
In the other case, they're drawings that, according to the person who drew them, are specifically designed to prevent this very same damage from happening to other people in real life.
Though I will be willing to concede a point to this. While clearly this is an argument against it, she was at least willing to find perspectives of both sides.
I mean, sure, but I think it's very clear that she's trying to push one side more than the other.
Yeah, that's
because she framed the artist whose name I still can't quite remember.
Shinji.
She framed him as basically absurd and immoral and basically tried to fearmonger him. Whereas this guy, she's framing as entirely correct and we should entirely be on his side.
I believe it's a woman.
Oh. But in any case, it's very clear that the Vice journalist has a bias
Mhm.
against manga because she finds it offensive. And again, I hate to burst this particular bubble, my dear, but your disgust response is not in and of itself an argument. Certainly not a moral argument. No one is making you go out and buy it. No one is making you go out and look at it. But that doesn't give you, but nor do you have the right to censor it or stifle it, especially when the artist went out of his way to tell you that he thinks there's a possibility that this can actually help prevent real life abuses. And given that there's data to suggest that catharsis is actually a legitimate way to get rid of these kind of impulses. In the case I can think of, it was about video games, but I would imagine there's a similar correlation here. He's probably not wrong, and the burden is definitely on you to find any contrary data if there is contrary data to be found.
Moving on.
Yep. Devil fruit.
相談者のやっぱり顔が浮かびますよね。多くの方がですね、こういうふうに見せ
Many of them were humiliated, like what you see in this manga.
And that is very bad for those actual people.
Yeah, no, I agree. And this.
But go ahead.
Sorry, no, it's just like I understand both sides. Obviously, I'm more for the freedom of expression as long as no one is actually getting hurt in the creation of this thing.
Yeah. That's why I specified earlier, if any of these artists use real-world models for their drawings, then fuck them.
Yeah, seriously.
But as far as we know, most artists do not use real-world models to create these drawings. They create these characters out of their own minds, to the best of anyone's knowledge, in most cases. And by all means, if you find the contrary example where someone is actually using models, that person deserves to be thrown away in a prison cell for a very, very long time. But barring that extreme exception, these are drawings and no one is actually harmed by it. And even the artist that you interviewed suggested that he thinks there might be a preventative aspect to what he does.
Right.
So,
anyway, Delford.
devil fruit.
ものにされてですね、性的な虐待を受けですね、
Is there
Others were even sexually abused. Yep.
And that is tragic for those real people, but drawings are not accountable for it.
Mhm.
Devil fruit.
a
Delford.
link between this material and instances of real abuse against children?
児童虐待を
It's impossible to measure.
Okay, good for him. Even he knows that this correlation is next to impossible.
I think it's a her. I'm. Hold on. I looked at their name. Hold on. Kazuna Kanjiri. Kanajiri.
Okay.
I think that's how you say it. Hold on. I'm going to look that name up just because I want to be absolutely sure, just so we're not being any type of rude.
Right. I got thrown off because the speaking voice sounds male, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's a woman.
Okay.
She's
Well
a
then,
woman.
yeah, good for her for knowing that this correlation is impossible to prove.
Well, I paused
Or-
while she was in.
Yeah. Anyway,
Hold on. Give me a second. Go back to where we were, just so. Okay. There we go. I think.
Mhm.
All right. Delford.
devil fruit.
This material and instances of real abuse against children.
児童虐待をその効果があるのかっていうのをこれをもう測定することって
It's
まず
possible to measure how it's affecting child abuse,
不可能な話ですから私はそういう
but I think the impact is quite big.
Unfortunately for you, my dear, until someone figures out a way to measure it, we really, really probably should lean on the libertarian side of it
I
and not the censorious side.
I mean, I agree with you, Dalton, but again, I see her point, and again, it's obviously biased given what she's had to help people deal with.
By no means am I saying she has to like it. I'm just saying
No,
that
obviously not. It's just, huh? This is a really gray area of things, I think, because of art.
yeah, like I said, in absence of any contrary evidence, we should err on the side of permissiveness rather than the side of censoriousness. The burden is on the person who wants to censor it rather than the person who wants to make it. Especially because in the example that we got earlier, the guy who draws it literally thinks it might have a preventative aspect to it.
Mhm.
Which, if nothing else, says that his intentions are not just his own freedom, but are actually in some sense noble.
Anyway, Callie,
Devil fruit.
devil fruit.
影響っていうのはものすごくあるのではないかなというふうに認識しています。グルーミングを容認しているわけですよね。かつ
It condones child grooming
その児童の虐待を容認している
and also child abuse.
No,
again, I see your point. I see your point. The story itself,
Yeah.
has
it
those elements.
it depicts it. I don't think it's see, but this is where I'm going to split hairs a little bit. Depicting something is not the same as condoning it.
Yeah, that's so very different. I mean, if there was an obvious, I mean, if the story itself bent over backwards to condone it, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, if it
If it-
actually tried to frame those actions as not just pleasurable but also moral, then we're then we're talking about a completely different subject. But as far as we know,
just depicting it, which, I mean, it's better that it's depicted in media so people are aware of it, because a lot of issues don't often get brought up.
yeah, they get swept under the rug.
So it is kind of better that it is depicted, at least. Not obviously, we're not condoning, like, we're not saying it should be condoned or propagandized or whatever. Like,
No. That's not at all what I am saying or have ever said or ever will say about this. But like I say, in absence of any data that suggests this is actually harmful, I'm going to I will always lean on the side of permissiveness rather than censoriousness.
Yeah.
All other things being equal, permissiveness is better than censoriousness. That being said, also, just to be clear, didn't the journalist say that she showed the artist's work from the last segment? Isn't that what she showed this woman?
Yes.
Okay, so even then, in this particular case, we actually have evidence that it's deliberately not condoning this, because the author themselves explicitly said, "No, I would never condone this happening in real life. I actually think it might have a preventative aspect." I'm paraphrasing and I summarized a bit, but that is pretty much what he said. He said that, one, it's for pleasure, who cares? Two, I actually think it might have a preventative aspect. So, like, at the very least, we know that in this case, this artist has no malice or warped intent whatsoever. In fact, we have evidence from, not even a minute ago, that suggests that he is so not in favor of it that he would rather offer an alternative for people like that to have catharsis rather than actually do it. Which is good.
Shall we?
Yeah. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
わけです。やはり被害、実際ですね、
In fact, if young women and children are exposed to this manga,
若い女性の方たち、児童の方がこういった漫画に接することによって、大人と性交
it normalizes the idea of having sex with adults.
No, I don't agree. And moreover, I'm pretty sure manga like this tends to be age restricted.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, no, because children aren't exposed to it directly. Two, because no. In the same way, the fact that in the same sense as, the fact that Superman can fly in DC Comics doesn't incentivize children to want to jump off of buildings. Most people who see things depicted in fiction understand that there's at least a barrier there between what is fiction and what is not fiction. I'm not saying no child has ever been so stupid that they tried to jump off a building and think they could fly like Superman, but such examples are very, very rare.
Right. So, I'll be honest, man, this is one of the harder topics we've had to discuss.
Yeah. That's why we ended up saving it, was because we knew it was going to be kind of difficult to handle.
Yeah. Shall we?
Yep. Devil fruit.
するっていうことがなんか当たり前のようなそういったイメージを植え付けてしまっているのではないかなと思いますね。子供であれば幼い頃からですね、自分には性的な価値があるって
We've made a society where children are forced to learn from experience early on.
ことをやっぱり体験的に学習させてしまっているその社会
that they have sexual value.
No, I don't agree. I don't agree with that either. Even in Japan, where it is, where stuff like this does happen, even in Japan, these kind of things are rare. This lady might be biased because she is the person they call to have to deal with this, and I would not trade places with her if you paid me all the money in the world. But just because you deal with this on a day-to-day basis does not mean it's not rare. Doesn't mean that your work is thankfully the outlier. I'm glad it's the outlier, because the alternative to it being the outlier would be so stomach-churning that I think I would actually vomit. But it is important to remember that your work is fortunately not necessary the majority of the time. It is rare, and thank all of the gods and all of the pantheons for that.
Devil fruit?
Devil fruit.
の形成になってしまっていると。
Sorry.
Japan isn't the only democratic country where kids are sexualized, but it is among the slowest to change its laws. Comics showing the violent objectification of children can be picked up at adult bookshops.
You said adult bookshops.
Yeah, which implies age restriction. And once again, their drawings, they are not real people, and you have yet to present any actual evidence that even denotes a correlation between the stuff existing in fiction and in animation and existing in real life. And even if you could demonstrate a correlation, there's no guarantee that correlation would be in any way statistically significant. And even if it were statistically significant, there's no possible way you could prove a link between correlation and causation. And that you do need to do those three things in order to even have the discussion as to whether you should ban it or not. One, there needs to actually be a correlation, which you have not evidenced. Two, that correlation needs to be statistically significant. And three, there needs to be some way of determining whether that correlation is in any way causative. If you can't do at least two out of those three things, then there is no need to have any sort of discussion. And until you've done all three of those things, we have no cause whatsoever to think about banning it.
Oh, okay, so I just looked at the chat. Hello, Dragon Turtle. Good to see you. I'm doing well.
Mhm.
And apparently he's aware of this video.
Yes, it's the Vice manga hit piece.
Okay. Yeah, we're just covering this for this. This is our whole 250.
Yep.
I'll be honest. I mean, it was either this or Lotus Eaters, so we kind of bit the bullet on this one.
And we will get back to taking down the Lotus Eaters for dumb things they have said.
At some point.
When March rolls around, and it will be our 5th year anniversary for the show.
Anyway, shall we?
Yep. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
Often for less than $10.
We asked a bunch of these stores whether we can film inside, but none of them said yes. So we actually have to go inside with a hidden camera and see just kind of how on display these books are.
They're adult bookstores, dear. the same thing we have in the US. Like, we this isn't even one of those things that's specific to Japan's culture. They have adult-specific bookstores in the same way we do. And
Yes.
I notice you're not fear-mongering about Western porn because of reasons. You're fear-mongering specifically about Japanese porn because you don't like Japanese culture and you want to morally grandstand about it.
Oh, filming without permission in shops and many other situations is illegal in Japan. They broke the law, says Dragon Journal.
Yeah. So yeah, you have officially become. But okay, I'm willing to overlook it in this case because they're journalists and like this is, basic investigative journalism 101. So there's that. But even so, we're talking about at a specifically adult bookshop that is specifically catered to selling this kind of content. And children obviously cannot be in here. So there is no way, unless, again, like in the extremely rare example, that one of these artists uses real world models, then fuck them. Then entirely, lock them up and throw away the key, as the old saying goes. But with that one exception out of the way, their drawings, no actual people are harmed, and they're age restricted, and they're only available in adult bookstores or in specifically labeled adult sections of bookstores.
Yeah.
Anyway, Devil Fruit.
Yeah, give me one sec.
The stores don't want to risk bad publicity, and we can see why. We visited a few of them, but we can't show you what's on the shelves because it's too sexually graphic.
It's an adult bookstore. What the fuck you expect?
And
It's like,
need
okay,
I rem-
hold on, Don. I have an example of this.
Go ahead.
America has sex shops, a bunch of that shit in there, like, it displays that stuff. It kind of has to because that's what they sell.
And it's specifically what their clientele go to them to purchase.
Yeah, so I mean, again, I get
this just in: car salesmen display cars.
Yeah, so this whole dramatic ass, like, no, I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but
Pearl
seriously,
clutching.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, virtue signaling and pearl clutching. Yeah, and need I remind you, Vice, that your website, your enterprise here, is called Vice. And back in the day when it was originally founded to be like the punk rock alternative to the overly censorious mainstream media. Oh, how far the mighty have fallen and sold out, apparently. Because now the website called Vice is morally pearl clutching about how immoral adult animated bookshops are. Again,
Right.
if it's actual pictures of actual children, fuck them. And I just realized how that was ambiguous. Right? By which I mean, if there are actual pictures of actual children, the people who own those pictures can screw themselves in the abstract sense, not in the literal sense. But these are drawings, and so no one is harmed, and it's age restricted, and this is specifically what the clientele go in to pay for. Yeah. Anyway, Devil Fruit.
Yeah, give me 1 second. All right, Devil Fruit.
And this whole aisle here is just sexual abuse, child pornography.
it's like every other page we can't film because it's just so much sex in it.
The genres that sexualize children and sometimes depict
Okay. It's
Drawings.
yeah, and again, it's you're in a adult bookstore.
And
How-
and yeah. Also, you're a like what 20 to 30-year-old woman. I can guarantee you that you have at least heard of adult bookshops that sell bodice stripper novels. And something tells me you're not the type of person to be offended by the existence of bodice stripper novels. You strike me as the kind of person who is so prudish and buttoned up all the time that you actually might need a bodice stripper novel to get off every right now and again. And by no means am I judging you for that. Lord knows I have read plenty of gay erotica in my time and will for, the foreseeable future. But my point is you're not pearl clutching about bodice strippers, and in these cases, no actual children are being harmed, again, unless the artist is using real world models, in which case shame on them and fuck every aspect of that situation. But nevertheless, these are drawings. They are in an adult bookstore restricted from children, and it is what the shops specifically sell. So people who are not interested in it don't even need to walk through the door. And in the meantime, no one is actually being harmed except for in that very specific case I just mentioned. Moving on. Devil fruit.
Okay. One sec. All right. Devil fruit.
Sex in it.
the genres that sexualize children and sometimes depict abuse are called Shotokan and Lolicon, after the classic Western novel Lolita. Some of these stories get pretty brutal, involving violence, incest, and humiliation.
Okay, so this girl is a 6th grader because
You know what else occasionally involves graphic situations like the ones you're describing? The movie Kill Bill. But you don't get morally affronted by the movie Kill Bill because you understand the premise that it is fictional, and therefore the bad things that occur in it are meant to frame the bad things that the villain is doing. And villains, sort of by their very nature, have to do bad things in order to be seen as villains. Not to mention that in the context of erotica or sexual stories like this, some people actually do have a forceful kink. They like the idea that they're called R-word that I can't say because YouTube. They're called R-word fantasies. And people have R-word fantasies and have for a jolly long time. And again, I bring up the case of the bodice stripper novel. You're not getting offended at those, presumably because in this particular moment you've forgotten that you're talking about something that is fictional and that no actual human beings are being harmed in any way. Let alone the fact that as far as Japanese manga go, there are straight up non-human entities in some of these. And yet you're getting pearl clutchy about stories that involve people that might even potentially look like but not actually be children, mind you. Let alone the yaoi, which literally involves people having anatomically impossible genitals and so on. But anyway, moving on. Devil fruit.
Yep. For the record, we are halfway there.
Halfway there, halfway. Sorry, SpongeBob reference.
All right. Yeah. Devil fruit.
Yep. Devil fruit.
you can see on her sports uniform. It's a 6'4", so she's in grade 6. And the scene is her in a photo shoot with a bunch of men, and they're taking photos of her in like sexually suggestive poses and positions. And she's so young.
Drawings. And dog. Unless you have evidence that these drawings are based on real people, then I will concede that there's at least a gray area here. In which case, whichever artist is using models in this particular case should be locked up and thrown, and the key should be thrown away. But if the person who drew this is just making up images from inside their own head, then no human has ever suffered as a result of this. And we don't have data that suggests there's any correlation between this kind of manga and actual rates of assault. So
Okay.
either provide me with that evidence or GTFO with your moralism.
Delford?
Devil fruit.
There are no studies that prove animated child porn leads to actual assault. What we do know from police data is that Japan is facing a child abuse crisis. More and more children are becoming victims of pornography on social media, and more adults are being arrested.
Okay, everything you said after there is no data on this is scaremongering, because you just admitted that you don't have data. So you are instead, rather than using data, are going to try to confect a sob story and a fear-mongering story in absence of data, because you really, really want to morally grandstand and pull clutch and virtue signal. And you really, really want to frame Japanese art as though it's the devil. Well, I'm sorry, but if you don't have data, then you have no platform from which to meddle with people's lives. And that is exactly what you would be doing if you prevented artists from making this or people from purchasing it. If you can't demonstrate any actual harm or even correlation to harm, then you have no case. None. Niet. Your case is thrown out of court. Goodbye. Anyway, devil fruit.
For abusing minors.
Hold on.
Mhm.
Sorry, ad. Just.
Sparing the audience the ad.
Yep. Okay.
Especially because they could ironically copyright claim the ad, which would make me laugh, but it would be really sad if we lost the channel just because of an ad.
Yep. Okay. All right. There we go. You can see it, right?
Give me 1 second. I was looking at the chat. Yep, I can see it.
All right. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
For abusing minors. Takashi Kato was once a massive consumer of this pornographic manga. He was also a serial child sex abuser.
その時は、
Guilt by association fallacy. F you.
My first victim was a girl who was 3 to 4 years old.
Do you know the difference between the people he may have masturbated to in the manga and the people he actually hurt? The people he actually hurt were actually, hurt and everything. Whereas no harm actually occurred when he was masturbating to this kind of manga. In fact, the best case scenario for everyone involved would have been if he had just become really, really addicted to the manga and never actually harmed any physical being whatsoever. that would be the ideal scenario in this case. The ideal scenario is would have been if he had gotten so preoccupied by masturbating to Lolly that he never actually hurt anyone. And it is very, very unfortunate for the world and for his victims, and even for him, I would say, that he didn't get that addicted to the Lolly.
Mhm.
But like the manga creator you talked about earlier, he
Shinji.
specifically, Shinji, he specifically said that he hoped and made the manga in question specifically so that people with those urges could get them out in a harmless way and not actually harm any actual people. So, have you forgotten the thing that you started this documentary with? It was like the second or third thing we talked about when this thing kicked off. The person who makes this kind of manga specifically told you, no, I make it so that people can get this catharsis and not have to actually hurt anyone in real life. And yet, suddenly, you would rather do guilt by association because one dude, unfortunately for the world and for his victims, did not get so addicted to the lolly that he prevented himself from doing utterly horrendous and shameful shit to actual people. And boo for that.
Mhm.
But if I had a time machine and I could actually go back and change something about this situation, I would encourage him to get as addicted as possible to Lolly so that he then couldn't or didn't have the remaining energy to go out and hurt actual people. That would be a win state. If the harm could have been prevented by his further addiction to the thing, we all would have been better off if he were more addicted to the thing.
Yep.
Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
3歳か4、6歳の、幼女に対して、最初の課題です。
Kato agreed to speak to us because he says he wants to stop others from preying on children. He says he's assaulted at least 11 kids, including abusing girls in public, teaching boys to masturbate, and paying children for sex abroad.
And therefore, fuck him, frankly.
Yeah. Like what? Okay. I get what she's trying to what this reporter is trying to do, but I'm not seeing currently how it correlates with.
It's a very dishonest conflation, is what it is. It's her trying to basically. It like I say, it's guilt by association. It's her trying to rub the guilt from the guy's actual crimes off onto Lolly instead of affixing them where they belong, which is his actual crimes and actual flesh and blood victims.
Okay, yeah, I see that giant turtle. Okay. Giant turtle, also worth noting, Lolly is a body type like short stack, not an age. There are adult women who are lollies, also adult women who keep being mistaken for children, apparently.
Yes, because as we
true.
mentioned at the top of the video response, because of the way femininity, youth, and neoteny are considered like the beauty standard in Japan, the age of the character is almost never directly correlated with how they physically look.
There is apparently one whose boyfriend keeps getting arrested because people think she's a minor, and a cosplayer cosplaying Tatsumaki, who was told she's not allowed to be lewd ever. Told by Twitter, of course. I remember that, actually. I remember that one, the second thing he mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a weird thing that. I mean, I'm short comparatively to like I mentioned this like way before you got here, Giant Turtle. I look a lot younger than I kind of am. You know, I'm 24. I but like when I shave and I'm like 5'8", I look a lot younger compared to like even when I was a senior in high school. There were freshmen I was around that were like taller than me, a lot older. It was weird. Um,
When I graduated high school, I was 5'2" still. I didn't really go through a growth spurt until college.
I went through my growth spurt like when I was in elementary.
And even now, I'm only like between 5'5" and 5'6". So there you go, Brainstormer. At least you're taller than me by like 3 or 4 inches.
I already knew that. Well, not the 3 to 4 inches thing. I just knew I was taller than you, obviously.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's like we didn't mention it by name, the lolly thing, because I totally forgot the name. But we did mention that characters, like how characters are drawn in like Japanese art, like Japanese cartooning. A lot of them usually look a lot younger than they actually are.
Yeah, Japan has a very, very obvious obsession with like femininity, neoteny, and youth, and thereby quite a lot of their characters, unless they're explicitly supposed to be muscular, quite a lot of their characters wind up being twinkish.
Yeah. Anyway, let me get to the tab. All right, Dolphin.
Yep, devil fruit.
When and how did you realize that you had a sexual desire for children?
中学生の時です。子供を
I was in middle school. I'd look at children and get very aroused. Okay, and when I was in middle school, I would. Okay, thing. I would, because like middle school wise, you're like in your preteens going into puberty. You're already in puberty, right?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends with middle school. Because like
Okay,
I was 13 when I started going through puberty, I think.
Yeah, me too. Like it's which I would start having feelings about girls. Now I wouldn't say sexual or aroused or anything, but I'd start noticing them more. You just like that's kind of the age, like around middle school age.
Yeah,
Going
and
into high school.
unfortunately, this guy noticed that his orientation, for lack of a better word, was the thing you should never ever do to children.
Yeah. Though technically, he said he was in middle school, so he was a child too.
That's the thing. When you consider, like at that point, if he had like grown out of it, he wouldn't have had any problems, because at that point he was basically talking about people who were probably fairly contemporaneous with him. The issue is that was his kink in perpetuity, and he didn't harmlessly masturbate to all the lolly to avoid harming actual people.
So, okay. Let me get to the tab. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
見てこうすごいワクワクしたりとか、大学生の時に
When I was in college,
ポルノ雑誌を見て
found these porn magazines. Okay.
Yeah. The world would have been better off if you had just stuck with the magazines, dude.
Yeah.
Like having the orientation isn't even necessarily the problem. It's what you chose to do with it, and what you chose to do with it involved actually harming actual people.
Mhm.
I think I can speak for every human on this planet when I say the world would have been better off if you had just kept on masturbating furiously and never harmed anyone ever.
Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
ポルノ雑誌の中に
There was a manga that depicted sexual abuse of young children.
男児を性虐待する内容の漫画が載っかっていて、どんどんそれだけが
That very quickly became my whole sexual world.
And if it had ended there, we wouldn't be having this conversation because you never would have actually harmed anyone.
Right.
The
Yeah.
world
Again,
would have been better off for it.
like you said before, I think I'm not really seeing the correlation here. As much as it's supposed to correlate, I'm not seeing it like naturally correlate.
Yeah, either the journalist went out of her way to try and force a connection where there isn't one, or this guy who is an admitted person who does things with children that no one should ever do, which I'm avoiding saying even the word because I don't want to get clipped out of context, and also because YouTube. But this guy is an admitted person who does things with children you should never ever do, and it seems like maybe he wants to blame the lolly instead of taking actual responsibility for what he actually did, which was actually harming people. Which is actually, honestly, one of the many reasons why this person is disgusting. Because he doesn't take full responsibility for what he did then.
I don't know if I would go that far, but I see your point. I'm gonna reserve my opinion on this man. Just
Right.
because
I'm not saying that that's necessarily what he's doing. I'm saying that is an option for what might be going on. Because either the journalist in question is going out of her way to find any example that she can tie back to Lolly, or maybe the person who she's interviewing is trying to basically. You heard the expression "the devil made me do it." I think this guy might potentially at least be going the manga made me do it. And no, I don't accept that as a premise. In any case, devil fruit.
yeah, give me. Sorry, I was looking at chat, but there's nothing new there. So
Mhm.
okay, devil fruit.
自分のその性の世界になっていきました。
How did reading this manga change
Oh.
your
Sorry, okay, it was the same thing. Never mind.
Mhm.
There we go. All right, let me just. Okay, there we go.
きました。
How did reading this manga change your understanding of sex and children?
漫画とか
I started
その
reading these manga often,
見るようになって、どんどんそういう
and more,
児童性虐待を
my
した
desire
り
to sexually assault children increased. Okay, that
is you being an outlier.
yeah, that's
Like I
That-
said, I think he's going the manga made me do it approach.
that's definitely what. With that sentence, it certainly sounds like it.
Now, just to be clear, you could have gone the entire opposite direction. You could have gotten out all your unspeakable urges by masturbating to the manga and never, ever actually harmed anyone. The fact that you didn't do that is, frankly, the part that is unspeakably horrible. Because the world would have been better off if you had just gotten really, really addicted to that manga and never actually harmed anyone.
Mhm.
There would be fewer actual flesh and blood people who had been
Hurt.
done unspeakable things to, if you had just stuck really, really hardcore with Lolly and never actually touched a real human being. And your potential argument of the manga made me do it is no more viable than the school shooter who says Doom made me do it, or GTA made me do it, or something like that. That's not how anything works or has ever worked. And quite a lot of people use things like video games or porn as catharsis, so they don't end up doing those types of things.
Anyway, shall we?
Yeah.
Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
気持ちが高まっている。描写を見
After
て、
seeing these depictions,
その描写を見て、で、それがこう自
those
分の
images were seared
脳
into my
内にインプッ
brain.
トされて、で、それをこう
I think of those images when I carried out those assaults.
Well, that's your fault then.
Yeah.
It's not the manga's fault. The manga didn't make you do it. You could have easily gone the other way and used it as a kind of masturbatory catharsis, and therefore never actually harmed anyone. And the world would have been better off if you had done that. If you had just gotten really, really addicted to Lolly, no actual flesh and blood human ever needed to be harmed. And the fact that you didn't is unfortunately very, very sad. This is probably the darkest subject matter we probably ever will cover.
I
hope.
honestly hope so. I do not want to cover shit like this, man. I honestly feel sick to my stomach right now.
Yeah. This is why we saved it for a milestone, because
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
even by our standards of stupidity, this is really fucking dark.
Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
こう思い浮かべながら加害をした感じですね。
Do you think this type of media should be banned in Japan?
はい。
Yes. There are people like me whose fantasies and actions escalate.
There are also people, broadly speaking, like you, sir, who use this manga as an excuse not to actually harm any real people, because they use the manga as catharsis, and then they no longer feel the need to harm anyone. And once more, and I will reiterate for the record, the world would have been better off if you had just stuck with the manga and never actually escalated to doing it to real people. And I desperately wish that was the case, because then there would be fewer victims. And that would be good.
Okay. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
僕のように、そういう漫画を見ることで、自分の行動だとか想像が
Due to the contents of this manga. Okay.
I refuse to let you blame the manga for what you specifically did.
You know, like I said, I was reserving judgment on this guy because I didn't know where he was gonna go with this, but yeah, no, it's definitely the manga made me do it. Crap.
Yeah. And just like the devil made me do it is not, in my opinion, a viable argument. The manga made me do it, or the video game made me do it, or the movie made me do it, or the comic made me do it, is not a viable argument. You should take responsibility for your own impulses, and especially the actions you choose to or not choose to do because of them. Because just like you were driven insane allegedly by this material, there are probably just as many, if not more, people who have similar tendencies to yours, and rather than using this manga to psych yourself up, they used it as catharsis to let those impulses out so that they didn't have to or weren't compelled to hurt anyone. And that is why those people are worlds better than you, sir. It's not the fact that you had this predilection, it's what you chose to do about it that is the issue. And you don't get to offload responsibility onto an art form because you couldn't use something for catharsis rather than amplification. Yeah, but devil fruit.
1 second. Okay, yeah. Devil fruit. Devil fruit.
エスカレートしてしまうのの原因になること。
Kato eventually turned himself in, but instead of prison, he got 4 years of probation and community service. He doesn't know what happened to his victims.
後悔するっていうか、その
I regret it. I think that what I did was extremely wrong.
Okay, I will give this person credit that he turned himself in and that he regrets it. Would that he would have thought of that before he did the things, but it's better off that he turned himself in. It speaks higher of him that he turned himself in rather than that he was,
Got caught.
forcefully dragged in.
Yeah. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
自分のやってきたことは全く間違ったことだって思って心理的な
I have
傷を
caused
与えてしまったと思います。
deep psychological wounds. And no shit.
Objectively correct answer that you should have come to before you committed the actions, sir. You should have been able to see ahead of time and gone, wait, if I did this to someone, it would actually psychologically damage them horribly. And I know hindsight is 20/20 and everything, but like personal responsibility has to factor in somewhere. And on stuff like this, it is very much a you did it or you didn't do it kind of thing. And there are ways you could have not done it. So
All right. Dragon fruit.
Yep. Devil fruit.
Yeah, devil fruit. Sorry.
It's because a person in our chat is named Dragon Turtle. It makes it the slips of the tongue become nigh impossible at that point.
Mm-hmm. All right. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
When Japan outlawed child pornography, its parliament refused to study the link between manga and abuse after pressure from publishers and some lawmakers.
Okay, here's the thing. The burden of proof is definitely on the people who want it banned more than it is the people who make the stuff. If you want to know a correlation, then you have to, or someone who thinks like you that has the necessary background in experimental procedures needs to do it, because it's not on, the burden is not on the people, the artists who make the stuff to find that correlation. You want action to be taken on this subject, you have to provide a reason for it, which means you have to produce data. And 1, there needs to be a correlation. 2, that correlation needs to be statistically significant. 3, there needs to be some mechanism by which we can demonstrate that it's causal rather than simply correlative. And 4, you then need to propose an action accordingly. If you can't do those things, then it is not on the artist to not make the art in the first place. Because in the process of simply making the art, there is no harm. The characters are fabricated from the artist's own mind and are fictional. So if you want it to be banned, you do need to find that correlation yourself. And you need to prove that that correlation is strong enough to be statistically significant. And you need to prove that that correlation is not merely a correlation, but is in some way causal. If you can do those 3 things, then we can have a different conversation. But until someone has done those 3 things, your moral indignation has no case. Devil fruit. Brainstormer.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, things froze for me for like a second there.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can hear me now? Can you see everything and
Yes.
stuff?
Everything is fine. It's all
Okay.
everything is going according to the plan, as the old Russian song says.
All right. Shall we?
Yep. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
漫画に影響があるんではな
The
くて、
comics aren't influencing
そもそ
people.
もそういう行為が犯罪とし
First,
て
these
存
crimes
在す
are
る
already
漫画
occurring,
があろうとなかろうと。
whether or not the manga
Mamoru
exists.
Ogino is an elected Tokyo official. He's also a manga artist.
まあこの漫画
Okay, well, if what he said there is verifiable, if indeed this trend was already occurring with or without the manga, then you have even less of a case than you did 5 seconds ago. And broadly speaking, I agree with him. I don't, until you provide me evidence to the contrary, I don't believe that any form of art that doesn't involve real people, mind you. If it involves real people, then burn whoever purchases it to the ground and throw them in an oubliette. But as long as it doesn't involve real people or isn't based on real people, there's no case here until you find data that correlation exists, is statistically significant, and is causal.
You know words. You know words.
Yeah. Yes, I know. Yeah. Anyway, devil fruit.
Well, she's saying many people agree that these manga contribute to child sex abuse. You had 2 people in this video. What would have been easier to do was randomly ask people on the street about this, so you can get a more wider net.
Or hell, if you want actual data on this topic, it's not a perfect situation, but at least an opinion poll would have been something to work with. If 60% of the Japanese public agreed with you, then I would be like, okay, whether or not there is that correlation, the Japanese public wants it done, so do it. But you didn't do that. You talked to one guy who was a manga artist who specifically said he thinks and hopes that his art prevents people from doing things to real people in real life, which good for him and based, by the way. You had another person whose job it is to deal with victims who for very obvious reasons was biased against the art form. but her being biased against the art form is not in and of itself an argument. You had one guy who basically pulled the manga made me do it argument, which, yes, he turned himself in, and yes, that is better than the alternative, but the fact that he's trying to offload his guilt onto an entire art form rather than acknowledging that there's something wrong with him is, to me, rather scummy. It's certainly not the most scummy thing he's done by any stretch of the imagination, but it doesn't help his case of being a good person or not.
Right? Is that statement, just given all the context we have of the video prior, just feels very disingenuous.
Yeah, and also, like, I would be more sympathetic if there were a public opinion poll and everything, but, and I certainly think that would be something you could act upon because, vox populi vox dei, as Elon Musk would say.
Mhm.
Means what the public wills, God wills. But at least that would be something to go off of. But you haven't even done that. All we know is that apparently some large percentage of people allegedly think this, which, one, even if you did get that public opinion poll, people could still be wrong. It doesn't matter that they're wrong if that's what the public wills, because that's how democracy works and shit. But people commonly holding that something is true doesn't make it so. Just like in the Middle Ages, large percentages of the world believed that the Earth was flat. It isn't, though, and verifiably isn't, though. So, yeah, no. Simply saying large percentages of people think that it might, one, they can be wrong, and two, until you provide solid data that is the prevailing opinion, there's nothing even to act upon here. And I would wager, this is my supposition here. I would wager that the Japanese public is free thinking and based enough that most of them wouldn't think that there's any correlation there. I could also be wrong, but I have seen enough Japanese people being based enough that I suspect they would be based in this matter as well. Anyway, devil fruit.
Yeah. The fruit. There we go.
は児童の性虐待につながるというふうに口を揃えてるぐらいに言ってるんですよね。この意見に関してはどう思われる？
What do you think about this opinion?
犯罪者を犯罪に
There's no evidence that this material leads criminals to their acts.
Which we know because the documentarian specifically told us earlier. So he is saying objectively correct things. So the only other option is to provide alternative evidence. And you haven't gotten any evidence either of public opinion or there is actually any meaningful correlation here, let alone that correlation is causative, and let alone that correlation would be statistically significant even if there was one.
All right. Devil fruit or anything else?
No, devil fruit.
Okay.
国が法律としてと
When the state thinks about laws or regulation,
根拠じゃないといけないんです。
there has to be a scientific basis.
Based.
Oh, hold on. Okay, then she says many countries have introduced regulations for moral reasons.
Well, I think I can speak for everyone in this particular conversation when I say fuck your morality. If it's not based on anything that can be verifiably shown to be either logical or real, then...
I mean, if it's
TFO.
both scientific and morally, then I can understand. But if it's just based on moral reasons, that can be an issue because, I mean, we've seen what happens when things are guided by solely morality.
Yeah, burn that person at the stake because we suspect them of doing a bad thing.
Yeah, it's like
Build a gulag because we suspect these people of doing a bad thing, or we declare they do a bad thing. Derp.
so. As much as I am a man who believes in having upstanding morals, I do understand that you also have to be pragmatic and well, yeah, I guess pragmatic, but also it's a case by case scenario in this, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Where I stand on it is if you can't be asked to be logical or have any meaningful evidence, then morality is basically a personal subjective choice, and no one is under any obligation to give a fuck about it, and it shouldn't inform or infuse into public policy without
Right.
either a strong argument or strong evidence, preferably both, because data without a logical framework behind it makes no sense and is meaningless, and logic without data behind it is very often meaningless. So,
Right.
preferably both logic and evidence, but yeah.
All right. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
の国々では倫理的な観点から規制をしております。なぜ日本はこういうふうに特別なんでしょうか。
そこにやっぱりその国の文化とか価値観とか、そういういろんな風俗とかいろんなものがやっぱ多少やっぱ関わってくるかなと思う。
Oh, sorry. Let me back that up. I got distracted for a second. Okay, many countries have introduced regulations for moral
規制を
reasons.
しております。なぜ日本はこういうふうに特別
Why is Japan the exception here?
そこにやっぱりその国の文化、
I think those rules are influenced
そういろんな風俗とかいろんなものがやっぱ
by
り
each country's culture, set of values, and customs. That is true.
Objectively correct statement again.
All right. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
同性愛とかそういったものの描写が
There are countries that have outlawed the depiction of same-sex couples. Yeah. Okay. He's not wrong. I don't have anything to say on that. So.
No, I think his argument is going to be, are you saying we should do that too simply because other countries do it? Which, if that is his argument, I agree entirely. It's not a good reason to censor and stifle art.
Yeah. Anyway, Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
もありますから、それはもう国によってとか国民民主主
It's
義ですか
based
ら。
on the will of the people. That's democracy. Have you purchased these comic books before? Okay, that's very telling that she didn't. She switched
topics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think she realized just how thoroughly she was refuted and was just like, shit, I need to think of something else.
Yeah, that's like what he's saying is up for discussion. You can have a discussion about that.
But
the fact that
she basically went, shit, he got me on all counts. I can't even argue that shit. Which that was just watching someone get BTFO'd in real time, ladies and gentlemen. That was ponage.
Yeah. All right. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
は購入したことはありますでしょうか。
児童ポルノのようなものは多分ないと思う。
I don't think so. Not child
We
pornography.
showed Ogino one of the comics depicting child abuse. すみません。
Okay. Sorry, I had to pause it. For
the MCA standards.
Could you explain what's depicted in this comic book? That's what she's asking. So, Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
この漫画を見て
どういうものが描かれてるかちょっと説明していただけますか？
小さい女の子が、これおじいさんかな。
There's a little girl, and I guess this must be an old man.
に、まあ、その下着を舐められたりだと
He's
か、
looking her. I don't want to say that.
The
Well, it's
part,
uh,
the part that defines the female anatomy.
no. He's it's okay. He's licking her underwear, but I still feel very uncomfortable saying that. So it's that's what he said. But I myself feel uncomfortable saying that. Just it's weird to say. It's a sentence you don't really think you're ever going to say. So
No, but wouldn't be the first time this show took us to weird places.
and it's all your fault, by the way. I want to mention that.
Yes, fine. You can send your hate mail, care of me, blah 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 blah.
All right. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
これでも実際のおじいさんなんか、
Is this really an old man?
やっぱ妖怪みたいな扱い感じで
He's drawn like a monster.
この漫画を見て荻野さんはどういうお気持ち？
What are your thoughts after reading that? Okay. The fact that it's mentioned that the old man who is sexually assaulting a young girl he mentions that it's depicted as a monster.
I think that in and of itself is
telling.
Is indicative of the manga in question is not condoning it.
No. Okay, again, it really does chop it up to should this or should this not be depicted? Because honestly, I do think these topics should be depicted because these are topics that, one, are very topical within Japan currently. And
and at the end of the day, what's basically on trial here is should we depict villains doing villainous things? And in order for stories to work, you do actually have to allow your villain to do villainous things. Because if your villains can't do villainous things, then what is the thrust of the story? If there's no villain to stop, if there's no immoral wrong to be righted, then most forms of storytelling kind of go out the window. And unfortunately, in order to have villains doing villainous things in stories, we actually have to write that they happen in the stories, or we have to depict them happening in the stories in the case of a visual medium. So yeah, in order for story to work, you have to have at least some percentage of bad people doing bad things, or shocking things happening to people in shocking ways, because it's sort of the engine of your story. Something remarkable has to happen at some point so that a story can actually happen. And without villains doing bad things, or at least shocking things happening in stories, what is supposed to draw people's attention to the stories? Like, sure, you could hypothetically tell a story about how someone existed in a utopian universe and nothing ever went wrong, but the novelty of that, because that's the main thrust of what would be entertaining about that, if indeed anything was, would wear off quickly. And without that novelty, all storytelling would basically fall into oblivion.
I'm back.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I had to handle something real quick off screen, so.
Yep.
Alright. Okay.
Devil fruit.
Yep. What are your thoughts after reading this? It's a comic book for adults that depicts a child. That's it.
思わないですね。
これでもこれ
Okay, good for this guy. He he had said more sensible things in the course of this like 30-second sequence than
2 or so,
the
2 to 3 minutes.
this guy has said more sensible things in the course of those 2 to 3 minutes that he was on screen than the documentarian has for the whole bloody thing. So yeah, I remain convinced of my permissiveness rather than censoriousness position.
Mhm. Okay.
Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
を見てでも、
うん
この漫画は守るべ
Do
き
you
だ
think this work should be
と思い
protected?
ますでしょうか。
そうですね。
Yes, I do.
特にそう思います。
特に問題
I
ない。
don't see anything out of the ordinary. Hold on. That went by a little too quick, so hold on. Let me move that back a bit. Uh,
特にそう思います。
I don't see anything out of the ordinary. I think it should be.
Correct.
Okay.
And bait. Again.
特に問題な点
そうですね。
So no issues, right?
There's no plan to ban this.
I respect that. I mean, it mentioned that he's on a board that does help with the law thing, but he's also a manga artist as well.
Mhm.
Which respect that he can have those two type of jobs because those are two well. I
He
think I
might
can
just
understand.
do the manga as a hobby, but even then, good for.
Well, no, I was gonna say both jobs are. Well, I was gonna say both jobs are high stress and
demanding.
like real. Yeah, from what I've heard of, like small stories, and again, the only manga I've ever truly read was Bakuman, which was telling the story of manga creators. That industry is like really fucking crazy.
Yeah,
Getting yourself in.
it's like an artistic sweatshop a lot of the time.
Yeah. But seriously, if he's working at I want to say sort of a political job. Again, like those two jobs are like so fucking stressful, and the fact that he maintains both of them is kind of insane to me.
Yeah, good for him, and it shows that he has a life outside of his political position too, which is something that I wish our politicians would do more of, because a large part of the problem with our politicians is that so many of them are so much one-trick ponies that they're irreversibly out of touch after a while. It is important to maintain a life, no matter how serious your job is, because otherwise you go insane and become out of touch, and then you do terrible shit with your life.
Shall we?
Yep.
Actually, let me move it back a bit because I think I paused while she was talking. So, just so we have that. All right, devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
そうですね。
There's no plan to ban this abusive manga. Japan's lawmakers say there are no real victims in this. Freedom of expression is enshrined in the Constitution, but child rights advocates warn that this isn't just a problem for Japan. Material that's legal here can and will be viewed everywhere.
That's not wrong.
It's not even abusive, except for maybe in the rare case where an artist uses, real world models. If they do that, then throw the book at them. Throw them into the oubliette. But unless they use real world models, then no one is harmed. It's not abusive. And I agree with the Japanese lawmakers. No one is harmed by this, ergo, you can go screw yourself.
I don't really else to say, so.
Yep. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
こういう漫画とかいろいろと、20
You've
年
been
以上
publishing
出版
these
されて
manga
る
for
と思うん
over
ですけど、
20 years.
ご家族とかはご存知なんですか？
But
こう
does
いう
your family know about the content you're publishing?
漫画を出してるっていうのは。
まあ、やっぱりちょっと言いづらいで
It's
すね。
difficult to tell them about it. I mean, to be fair, if I understand correctly, I mean, yeah, obviously for this, yeah, it's a special. It's a very niche thing, and I don't think
Yeah,
if I made porn, I kind of would not want to tell my family about it. To be fully honest,
it would be one of those things you wouldn't bring up around the dinner table, especially in Japan, where like civility and honor and like propriety is very, very important.
yeah, I mean,
But that's not the same as saying that it's immoral or that it's abusive or that it's harmful or that anything should be done about it. It just means it's awkward.
yeah, I mean, being a manga artist in general, I think is somewhat, I wouldn't say taboo, but is not regular for the society and culture of Japan.
It's not always the most respectable of occupations. And
Oh yeah,
again,
just like the comic industry was hardly ever respected in its early days. So
yeah, and
America.
again, and Japan is very much all about like honor and dignity and bringing prestige to the family and so on. So yeah, I can totally see why it's not the most respected position. I think they're wrong. I think just like they were wrong here when they said that like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby weren't real authors because they did comics or something. Like,
oh, fuck off.
yeah, that's immeasurably stupid. Same thing with you're telling me that Akira Toriyama isn't a great artist because he created Dragon Ball? Because like 3 entire generations of humans would probably disagree with you strenuously on that. I remember the Toonami days. I remember watching Dragon Ball on Toonami. So yeah, no. People who do these kind of art forms deserve our respect, period. But that's immaterial to what's actually going on here, which is it's not harmful. You have no data to suggest that it's harmful. All you have is disgust and moral indignation. And disgust and moral indignation and a little bit of guilt by association are not arguments by themselves. So get the data to back up your claims, or STFU, shut the fuck up.
Mm-hmm. All right. Maybe like I want to say about 2 minutes or so left.
Okay. Devil fruit.
By the way, she's asking the same. She's asking the original artist from the beginning about telling his family and stuff. So I wasn't sure if you were aware, so I was just asking.
It didn't. I didn't realize that. No, but
yeah, she was all right. Let me back it up a bit just so the full context, I guess.
Yep.
All right. It's difficult.
やっぱりちょっと言いづらいですよね。やっぱり大きな声では言えないですよね。
It's not something that I can be proud of.
罪悪感とかはあったりします
Do you ever feel guilty?
罪悪感は基本的には
Basically, I'd be lying if I said I
ないと言っ
didn't.
たら嘘になります。まあ、論理的
Logically
には
speaking, what I'm
いいこ
doing
とはしてな
isn't
い。
good.
褒められたことはしてないなと思いま
I'm
す。
not doing anything praiseworthy. That's self-awareness. Like I don't.
Yeah, self-awareness is healthy. I wish the interviewer would have a little bit of it, especially. Although I will slightly disagree with him because from what we heard earlier, he does what he does, at least somewhat, because he thinks it might prevent actual harm falling people and giving people catharsis, which I think that if like being a manga artist regardless is I find to be perfectly respectable, but even like even excluding that, I think it's actually kind of admirable that he gives, like, his intention is to give people the means to harmlessly masturbate to this shit so that no actual child need be harmed. I think that if nothing else, that intention, that supposition is worthy of respect, is admirable, is venerable. So I'm gonna disagree with him a little bit here. I think if I were the person in charge of what it constitutes honor, I think that's honorable. That the intention, if nothing else, is certainly honorable.
Again, I still respect the self-awareness, if nothing else.
Yeah, no, the self-awareness also is certainly respectable, and it shows a very humble person who's actually probably thought a lot about this. But also, based on what we heard in the beginning, I actually think this guy deserves some props for being humble enough and self-aware enough to actually have thought about this and to have come to the conclusion of, if I can spare one real-world child from getting taken advantage of by giving people masturbation material, that's better for the world, basically. And I realize I'm summarizing and paraphrasing like a motherfucker, but that ultimately seems to have been the intention, at least in that segment earlier. So yeah, no, this guy deserves props both for his skills as an artist, but also for actually having the self-awareness, the humility, and the virtue of intention to have thought of that in the first place.
Mm-hmm. All right. Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
ただ、まあ、犯罪を犯してるわけ
But
で
I
もない
haven't
んで。
broken the law either. All right, that's it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I
Oh,
assume
never
what's
mind.
left.
No, never mind. There's something else. Okay, sorry.
Crap.
It's just that
Devil
they
fruit.
ended it with. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, devil fruit.
Akiyoshi Saito is a psychiatric social worker in Tokyo who's treated at least 150 child sex offenders, including Takashi Kato.
How many of your clients consume this type of media?
90% 以上。
About 90% of them have viewed these titles.
Oh, fuck you. Oh, so much fuck you. This is literally Frederick Ortham's argument. This is literally the argument he made in Seduction of the Innocent. Most of my patients consume comics, therefore comics must be to blame. Thorpe.
Like, I get it, but again, it's the whole disingenuous thing because they're using a person who's clearly biased because they've dealt with this stuff enough. You know, like.
Well, and we don't even know if the person she's interviewing actually thinks that it is causal. He just answered the question honestly. So
yeah,
like, okay, well, I wasn't even at that point.
Well, okay, that's fair. I'm just saying that again.
I wasn't even at that point arguing with the person who said that. I'm just saying, it seems at the very least like the interviewer wants there to be a Frederick Wortham style argument of, well, a lot of people who have done this heinous action have also consumed this type of media, so the media is to blame, which is Frederick Wortham's actual argument in The Seduction of the Innocent.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. I retract my. I'm not. Mike, I was clear.
Take your time.
Sorry. Yeah. To be clear, I was not rebuting what the man said. I was more criticizing the reporter because clearly, like Dalton said, because he put it in much better words.
She wants to frame it very much in the Frederick Wortham Seduction of the Innocent framework of, well, most people who have committed this heinous action are manga readers, and therefore it must be the manga's fault somehow, basically.
Yeah. So shall we?
And I apologize for jumping that particular gun if it doesn't end up going that way. It's just I'm really, really anal retentive about my hatred for Frederick Wortham and his whole
Mhm.
backwards argument in Seduction of the Innocent. So
Don.
yeah.
Shall we?
But yeah. Devil Fruit.
Fruit.
だったので、そのパンドラの箱が開いたというふうに、
Many of the perpetrators say
話す
Pandora's box opened for them.
I don't freaking care. I especially don't freaking care about the opinions of people who have actually committed those kind of crimes. Especially not as it pertains to them basically offloading their guilt onto the manga and then going, the manga made me do it.
Yeah.
Doom didn't make the Columbine shooter an abusive background and horrible home life did. GTA 5 doesn't make car thieves, and Lolly doesn't make sexual criminals.
Devil Fruit.
Devil Fruit.
加害者はやはり多いので、
Why is it so difficult for our society in Japan to get rid of these sexual depictions of children in manga and anime?
の人権を軽視している。
I believe that children's rights are taken lightly in our society. I mean, I don't know
That
much
may-
about Japanese.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say I'm not gonna really say much because I'm not entirely sure of Japanese society's like take on children's rights. So
Right. But even so, we don't even need to address that. Irrespective of whether or not children's rights are diminished in Japan, which by the way, if they are, shame. But irrespective of whether children's rights are taken advantage of in Japan or not, the manga is not to blame. The manga is not a part of the ways in which children's rights are taken advantage of, because the images depicted in these manga are fictional drawings of people that don't actually exist and therefore cannot be harmed in the way that physical beings can be physically and psychologically harmed. Therefore, even if Japanese culture is particularly harsh about children, which again, if they are, shame on them. But even if that is the case, it is not an argument, it is not a reason, it is not related to even whether or not lolly should exist. So, once again, stop blaming the manga for things that happen in reality unless you have data that suggests there is actually a correlation. If you have that data, and it can prove a correlation, it can prove that correlation is statistically significant, and it can prove that that correlation is in some way causal. But only then, if you can do those three things, then we can have a different conversation about this. But until the day when you have data that suggests all three of those things, your moral arguments do not matter because the manga is not to blame. It does not violate John Stuart Mill's harm principle, and therefore you can shut the fuck up.
Devil Fruit.
Devil Fruit.
風潮が私自身はあるなと思っています。やっぱり子供の人権をしっかり守る
If our
社会
society
であれば
protected children's rights more stringently,
仮に表
regardless
現
of
の自
issues
由
of
という
freedom
問題があ
of
ったにせよ、
freedom of expression,
子供を性虐待するような
dissemination of this type of material wouldn't be allowed.
Okay, so this guy actually is making the Frederick Wortham argument. I retract my previous delay in condemning this guy. My dude, first of all, you're claiming that children's rights are more important than freedom of expression. And the two aren't even at odds with each other. Two, just like Frederick Wortham was wrong in the 50s when he wrote Seduction, or 40s, I believe, when he wrote Seduction of the Innocent. I'm going to remind you of a very, very, very basic tenet of sociological research, which is correlation does not equal causation. And no amount of someone saying the comic made me do it, the video game made me do it, the movie made me do it, or the manga made me do it is valid. None. Unless you have the data that suggests there is a correlation which is statistically significant and can be demonstrated to be in some way causal. Unless you have that data and that argument that suggests that, you have no leg to stand on. There is no need to juxtapose children's rights with artist rights because there is no evidence or argument that suggests the two are even at odds with each other. They're not even related. The fact that you're choosing to relate them means you're trying to blame the manga when you should be blaming the actual criminals who do actual things in actual real life. The two aren't related. I don't care if literally every pedo who ever pedoed had lolly. The lolly was not a contributing factor. The lolly did not make him do it, or her do it for that matter. Because there are female sexual predators as well, which is a completely different conversation, but yeah. Regardless of the gender of the abuser, the lolly doesn't make him do it. The comic didn't make him do it, the movie didn't make him do it, the video game didn't make him do it. Art does not make people do those things. End of discussion. If you disagree with me, present data and arguments, and I'm not going to entertain it until then.
Alright.
Devil Fruit.
Yep. Alright, 1 second. Thing is. Okay, there we go. Tab's being weird, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Alright. Yep. Alright. Devil Fruit.
創作物を流布させるようなことにはならないと思いますし。
Some people say that there's no proof that this media links to actual sex crimes against children, but what do you make of this argument?
私は将来
I don't think people are born thinking they'll become pedophiles.
ペドフィリアになるんだと思って生まれてくる人はやっぱりいないわけで、この日本の社会の中で
They're likely conditioned to become, the P word through Japanese society, which, I mean,
no, I'm sorry. I hate to disagree with you, but the social constructivist argument is bullshit, especially when it comes to sexual orientation. As much as it is gross and as much as it makes my skin crawl, there is evidence to suggest that child's obsession is just like any other orientation. That doesn't mean it should be treated like every other orientation, though, however, because unlike other forms of sexual orientation, there is an actual argument about the fact that people will be harmed by people with children obsession. Unlike same-sex, unlike polyamorous, unlike pansexual, unlike all the other orientations, the difference, the distinct factor that makes child obsession wrong and none of the other orientations wrong is this thing we call the harm principle. When it's consenting adults having sex with other consenting adults, barring particular cases, there is no harm principle violation. When it's an adult and a child, there is a harm principle violation. And that is why child obsession is wrong and other orientations are not wrong. However, in terms of the biological causes of both of these, there is evidence to suggest that it is a, unfortunately, natural phenomenon. By all means, still keep an eye on people with that orientation so that they don't abuse people. By all means, encourage them to masturbate instead of abusing people. But fuck your social constructivist argument. Society can exacerbate certain things, but it cannot create things from thin fucking air. And orientations are
okay,
orientations, regardless.
I retract my statement earlier with agreeing with this man, given what you said. Granted, it's not something I think about often in terms of child obsessed, as you put.
Yeah.
So I have limited knowledge on this, and
yeah,
all right.
I wish it weren't like every other orientation, but at least in terms of its causes, it is. We shouldn't treat it the same because of the harm thing. But
hell no. That's no. Despite whatever weirdos out there have tried to normalize that shit, fuck no.
Yeah, no. I am not going to in any way advocate that we do treat them morally equivalently, but we should treat them biologically equivalently because there's evidence that
anyway,
psychologically and neurologically it's similar. Anyway, moving on.
Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
ペドフィリアになっていくと考えていいと思います。というわけではありませんが、
sorry for the sorry, I was looking at the time and then I forgot to look at the thing, so
と考えていいと思います。というわけではありませんが、
not everyone will act on this conditioning.
実際に一人でも
But if this material can motivate a person to become a perpetrator,
のであれば、やはり
then a serious debate must be had about their
をどのよ
existence.
うに扱っていくかを、真剣に議論する必要。
Okay, once again, unfortunately, you put the cart before the horse. First of all, we need to get data to determine whether there is even a relationship between these two things, and whether that relationship is significant, and whether that relationship is in any way causal. If we can't do those three things, if we can't get data that suggests there is a strong enough correlation, and that correlation is in some way causal, there's literally no reason to do anything, because before we do anything about this alleged social conditioning, which isn't social conditioning because, again, I reject the social constructivist argument in this case. Until we can actually get data that suggests that, we must bet on the side of permissiveness in terms of the artist's freedom of expression, instead of the censor's tendency to be morally offended by every fucking thing under the sun.
Alright, we have 52 seconds left, so...
Yeah.
Devil fruit.
Devil fruit.
必要があるのかなっていうふうに思います。
I'm Michael Lehrman.
Okay. I think that's just someone promoting for Vice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is basically their closing credits. Skip.
Yep.
250 episodes, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Although I wish we had something to end more positively on. I don't think I have anything, so we are going to call it there. And we will see you next week. And then the week after that will be theme month. Yay.
Because February belongs to Valentine's Day, in the same way December belongs to Christmas, and October belongs to Halloween.
So with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avirze, sayonara, peace, cheers, and...
Shalom and fuck off.